Hello everybody and welcome to part 2 of my Formula One Encyclopedia read-through. In part 1 we covered a brief timeline of Formula One's history as well as the first few drivers in alphabetical order. In today's read-through we're just going to carry on reading and see where we get up to. I'm going to try and do as many of the drivers as I can. We are still in the B's in terms of drivers, so we still got quite a lot to get through. I am doing this part soft spoken rather than whispered because I feel that's what I'm better at, so I'm hoping that you'll enjoy this just as much as you enjoyed the first one, if you indeed watched the first one. But I hope you'll enjoy today's reading. So we are going to start with Jack Brabham. We ended last time with Gerhard Berger, so the next one in the list alphabetically is Jack Brabham. Now Jack Brabham was born on the 2nd of April 1926. I'm pretty sure, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure he died a couple of years back. This book, I should say that this book only goes up to 2011 because I bought it quite a few years ago. I'm pretty sure Jack Brabham died a couple of years ago, but I'm not entirely certain, so I'm not going to say for sure. He was born in April 1926 in Australia. He started 126 Grand Prix and he won 14 races. He scored 261 points in total, and he was a 3-time world champion in 1959, 1960 and 1966. So, 3 times world champion. Jack Brabham moved from the dirt track circuits of his native Australia to Britain in 1955 to test himself against the cream of Europe. He joined the Cooper Car Company team and made his F1 debut at the British Grand Prix that year. He gave the Works team its first success at Monaco in 1959, going on to win the championship title ahead of Stirling Moss. In 1960, Brabham retained his title with 2 rounds to spare. When he slipped down the rankings in 1961, he set up his own team, and before the 1962 season was out, he'd become the first man to notch championship points in his own car. The fledgling team achieved its first victory with Dan Gurney in the 1964 French Grand Prix. 2 years later, Jack matched that achievement, followed by 3 more victories in 1966 to win his 3rd World Championship. He remains the only man to lift the crown in a car bearing his name. Brabham competed for 4 more years, claiming his 14th and final victory at Kyalami in 1970. He retired after finishing 5th in that year's championship and sold the team to Bernie Ecclestone the following year. Okay, so the next driver is Tony Brooks. Tony Brooks was born on the 25th of February, 1932 in Duckenfield in England. He started 38 Grand Prix and won 6 races, and one of them was shared. Apparently we'll probably read more about that during the article. Not the article, what am I thinking of? The page. Let's just carry on, shall we? 75 points in total. Championship runner-up for Ferrari. Tony Brooks gave up a career in dentistry to concentrate on motor racing. 1955 was his breakthrough year when he moved to single-seaters, winning the non-championship Syracuse Grand Prix in a Connaught on his Formula One debut. The following year, Brooks contested his first World Championship with BRM, but it was to prove a false dawn as he was thrown from his car during practice at Silverstone and spent the rest of the year competing in sports car events. Having signed for Van Wall in 1957, he finished 5th in the championship that year. Brooks won 3 times in 1958 in Belgium, Germany and Italy, but a number of retirements meant that he had to settle for 3rd place overall behind Hawthorne and Moss. Van Wall withdrew at the end of the year and Brooks moved to Ferrari, where he finished the season runner-up, 4 points behind the formidable Jack Brabham. In his final 2 seasons he slipped down the rankings, garnering a total of just 13 points. Having joined the Yeoman credit team in 1960, Brooks moved back to BRM for his final campaign. He retired at the end of 1961 to concentrate on his garage business. Jenson Button. Now, Jenson Button was born on the 19th of January 1980 in Frome in England. He started 209 Grand Prix at the time of this book being released and had 12 victories, again at the time of this book being released, 811 points, and he was the world champion in 2009. Britain's 10th world champion. Having started in cadet karts at the age of 8, Button won the British Championship in 1990 and 1991, finishing runner-up in the World Championship in 1995. In 1997, at the age of 17, he became the youngest winner of the European Super A Championship and was seen as one of motorsport's rising stars. In 1998, he continued his upward surge, taking the British Formula 4 title and third place in the F3 Championship. In late 1999, Button finally signed with Williams, finishing 6th in only his second Grand Prix, Interlagos 2000, and becoming the youngest Briton to notch a championship point. He ended the year in 8th place. Button spent the next 2 seasons with Benetton Renault. In 2002, he scored in 7 races and finished 7th in the final table. He moved to BAR in 2003, regularly performing teammate Jacques Villeneuve, a former world champion, outperforming Jacques Villeneuve, should I say. In 2004, only the Ferraris got the better of Button, who stood on the podium 10 times and scored 85 points. Button started 2005 poorly, with a disqualification at the San Marino Grand Prix and hence a 3-race ban. His performance improved with 3rd places at both Hockenheim and Spa-Francorchamps, ending the season with 37 points and in 9th overall. A number of contractual controversies during 2004 and 2005 between Button, Honda and Williams led to speculation that he would be leaving BAR. In fact, he remained with the Honda team during 2005 and went on to win his first race with them at the Hungaroring in 2006. Button notched just 9 points over the next 2 seasons and went into the 2009 campaign under the new Brawn GP banner, following Ross Brawn's buyout of the Honda team. Jenson made the most of the highly competitive Mercedes-powered BGP 001, winning 6 of the first 7 races and scoring in all 16 of the races he finished. He secured the title with a storming drive at Interlagos, finishing 5th after lining up 4th on the grid. Button also contributed the lion's share of the points, as Brawn captured the Constructors' title in its single year in existence. Britain's 10th world champion signed for McLaren to partner the compatriot whose crown he had taken, Lewis Hamilton. He notched 2 early season victories in 2010 and remained in contention for most of the year, before finishing in 5th place just behind his McLaren teammate. 2011 saw him finish runner-up to Vettel, splitting the mighty Red Bulls and coming out on top in the intra-team battle with Lewis, the first man to do so. Button also signed a deal committing his long-term future to McLaren. Okay, so the next one is Jim Clark, another legend of British motorsport. Jim Clark was born on the 4th of March 1936 in Kilmarnie in Scotland, and he died on the 7th of April 1968. He started 72 races, scored 25 wins and 274 points overall, and he was world champion in 1963 and 1965. Tragic end for Supreme Racer. Famous for his smoothness, effortless control and computer-like brain, Jim Clark inherited the mantle of Supreme Champion from Fangio. Having joined Lotus in 1960, he spent his whole career there, forging a formidable partnership with team boss Colin Chapman. His Grand Prix debut came at Zandvoort in 1960, picking up a respectable 8 points by the end of the season. The following year he gained 8th place overall, but the campaign was overshadowed by his involvement in the crash at Monza, in which several spectators were killed and Ferrari's Wolfgang von Trips lost his life. Clark's maiden victory came at the 1962 Belgian Grand Prix, and he went into the final round in South Africa with a chance at the championship. He was heading for the victory which would have snatched the crown from Graham Hill when his Lotus failed. Brushing aside disappointment, Clark took the championship the following year, winning 7 of the 10 rounds. His chances of retaining his title in 1964 were lost when the Lotus failed on the penultimate lap of the final race in Mexico. He took his second world crown in 1965 with another maximum haul from the first 6 races where he reached the line. Victory in the Indy 500 made it a notable double. 1966 was a relatively lean season, but early in 1967 the new Cosworth DFV engine, that's a mouthful, arrived and Clark was immediately back in contention. 4 more wins put him third in the championship behind the 2 powerful Brabhams. His first victory in 1968 came at Kyalami, giving him his 25th career success and putting him 1 ahead of Fangio in the all-time list. Clark was 31 and at the height of his powers when he competed in an F2 race at Hockenheim on the 7th of April. His car left the track and hit a tree, killing him instantly. Peter Collins. Peter Collins was born on the 6th of November 1931 in Kidderminster in England and died on the 3rd of August 1958. He started 32 Grand Prix and scored 3 victories and 47 points in total. Tragic end for generous Englishman. Peter Collins graduated to Formula One as a 20-year-old, making his debut with HWM at the 1952 Swiss Grand Prix. He struggled to make any impression in what was an unreliable car, a pattern that was to be repeated over the next 3 years. In that time he drove for Vanwall and BRM as well as HWM, but his main success came in sports cars with the Aston Martin Works team. When the hardware allowed, Collins was certainly quick, a fact not lost on Ferrari, who signed him for 1956. He played the supporting role to Fangio, notably at Monaco, where he handed his Lancia Ferrari over after the 3 times champions car failed. Back-to-back victories at Spa, and I'm going to go with Rems, I don't know how that's pronounced, showed that Collins was a serious contender in his own right. Both Collins and Jean Behra went into the final race, Monza, knowing they could snatch the title from Fangio with a victory and fastest lap, provided the Argentine failed to score. With Behra and Fangio out of the race, Collins allowed Fangio to take over his car, sacrificing his own championship ambitions. Fangio duly took the title, while Moss won the race, relegating Collins to 3rd in the final championship table. 1957 was something of an anticlimax, Collins recording just 2 third places in a season dominated by Fangio and Maserati. 1958 augured well as Ferrari fielded the new 246 Dino. Collins registered 2 top 6 finishes before beating teammate Mike Hawthorne into 2nd place at Silverstone. Collins lay 3rd in the championship as the circus moved to the Nürburgring. There, vying for the lead with Tony Brooks's Vanwall, Collins crashed and was fatally injured when he was flung from his car. He was 26. Collins finished a posthumous 5th in that year's championship, but it was for his magnanimous act of sportsmanship in helping Fangio claim his 4th world crown that he is best remembered. David Coulthard. We're getting through a lot of British drivers at the moment, I have to say. David Coulthard was born on the 27th of March 1971 in Twynham in Scotland. He started 247 races, won 13 of them, and had 535 points overall. Scott's record race haul with McLaren. From winning a string of Scottish karting titles in the mid-1980s, David Coulthard progressed through the ranks of Formula 3 and F3000, with top 3 finishes in each of those championships. He was the inaugural winner of the McLaren Autosport BRDC Award in 1989, on the back of his success in the Formula Ford. In 1991, he just missed out on the British F3 title, beaten narrowly by another rising star, Rubens Barrichello. He tested for Williams in 1993, but it was not until 1994 and Senna's death at San Marino that he got his chance in the F1 team, partnering Damon Hill. From 8 races he amassed 14 points, but was replaced by the returning Nigel Mansell for the final 3 races. Even so, Coulthard was offered the drive for the 1995 season and earned 3rd place with 8 podiums in that year's title race. He joined McLaren in 1996 and remained there for 9 years, driving 150 races, a record for a driver with one team. Initially, Coulthard's ranking slipped to 7th in 1996, but 2 wins at Melbourne and Monza the following year helped him to equal 3rd in that year's title race. Over the next 2 years, his teammate Mika Häkkinen dominated the championship, winning both the 1998 and 1999 titles, with Coulthard managing just 3rd and 4th respectively. By 2001 he had emerged from Häkkinen's shadow, but Schumacher's time had come and Coulthard finished a distant 2nd in the championship. By 2003 Kimi Räikkönen had taken over as McLaren's front-runner, and at the end of the following year Coulthard left to sign for the new Red Bull Racing team. Although not managing any podiums, he ended the season with 24 points and 12th place overall. He continued racing with Red Bull in 2006 and achieved the team's first podium at Monaco, where he came in 3rd. He ended the 2007 season in 10th place after amassing 14 points. Coulthard announced that he would retire at the end of the 2008 season. He got into the points only twice in his swan song year, but there was a final flourish at the Canadian Grand Prix, where he made it onto the podium for a 60-second time, should I say. He remained in the sport as a media pundit and a consultant to Red Bull. Nino Farina. Nino Farina was born on the 30th of October 1906 in Turin in Italy and died on the 30th of June 1966. He started 33 races and won 5 of them, and a points total of 127.33, so I'm assuming that he got a 3rd of a point somewhere, and he was the first ever Formula One world champion in 1950. Italian becomes first Formula One champion. Giuseppe Nino Farina was a protege of Tazio Nuvolari in the 1930s, becoming Alfa Romeo's #1 driver when Nuvolari left to join Auto Union in 1937. He won a hat-trick of Italian championships prior to the outbreak of World War II, and afterwards drove Maseratis and Ferraris, but returned to Alfa on the eve of the new Drivers' Championship in 1950. Farina won the very first race, held at Silverstone on the 13th of May 1950, and snatched the title by 3 points. The following year the tables were turned. Farina won just once and slipped to 4th in the title race, 12 points behind Fangio. Farina moved to Ferrari for 1952, where he was a regular runner-up to teammate Alberto Ascari, and finished 2nd and 3rd in the championship for 1952 and 1953, respectively. Ascari departed Ferrari in 1954, leaving Farina the team's #1 driver, but his season was blighted by injury. He sustained a broken arm in the Mille Miglia, then suffered terrible burns during a sports car race at Monza. He returned in 1955 to finish 5th in that year's championship, retiring at the end of the season. He was killed in a road accident while on his way to watch the 1966 French Grand Prix. Okay, so the next guy wasn't too bad either, goes by the name of Juan Manuel Fangio. Juan Manuel Fangio was born on the 24th of June 1911 in Balcarce, I'm going to go for, in Argentina, and he died on the 17th of July 1995. He started 51 races and won 24 of them, which is a pretty good ratio, I'm not going to lie. And he scored a points total of 277.14, which might be the weirdest points total of all time. And he was world champion in 1951, 1954, 1955, 1956 and 1957. Veteran ace becomes 5 times world champion. In 1949, at the age of 37, Juan Manuel Fangio left his native Argentina to try his hand on the racetracks of Europe. He was an unknown quantity, but 6 wins in 10 starts changed all that. Alfa Romeo quickly signed him for his inaugural, or the inaugural, World Championship in 1950. With teammates Farina and Fagioli with 3 Fs, Alfa dominated the series. Having ceded the championship title to Farina that year, in 1951, Fangio went into the final round of the Spanish Grand Prix, holding the advantage and won easily to claim the first of his 5 world titles. A broken neck put him out of the title race for 1952. He returned the following year with Maserati, but it was Ascari and Ferrari's year. At the beginning of the 1954 season, with 2 wins for Maserati, Fangio moved to Mercedes to drive the W196. He gave it a maiden victory at, again I'm just going to go for Rems, followed by 3 more wins and the world title. 1955 brought 4 more victories and a 3rd championship title, in a season truncated by the tragedy at Le Mans, where over 80 spectators were killed. Fangio's 4th world title was with Ferrari in 1956, and is best remembered for the magnanimity of teammate Peter Collins, who twice gave him his car. The second time, Collins himself had a chance of lifting the title. His generosity allowed Fangio a shared second behind Moss, giving him the championship by 3 points. He returned to Maserati for 1957, and 4 wins in the first 5 European rounds set up his 5th world title. Fangio retired midway through the 1958 campaign with a victories to starts ratio of almost 50%. Emerson Fittipaldi. Emerson Fittipaldi was born on the 12th of December 1946 in Sao Paulo in Brazil. He started 144 races and scored 14 victories with a points total of 281. He was world champion in 1972 and 1974. World champion at 25. In becoming world champion at the age of 25 years and 298 days, Emerson Fittipaldi became the youngest world champion F1 had known. This record stood until 2005, when the honour passed to Fernando Alonso, world title holder at 24 years and 59 days. Son of a motorsport commentator, Emerson Fittipaldi and his brother Wilson drove karts in her native Brazil, Emerson becoming Brazilian champion at the age of 18. In 1969, the young Emerson left Brazil for Britain and began competing in Formula Ford. Within 2 years, he had impressed enough to earn an F1 berth with Lotus. He finished 4th behind teammate Jochen Rindt at Hockenheim in 1970, despite running an outdated model. Following Rindt's death, Fittipaldi drove the superior Lotus 72 to victory at the US Grand Prix. His maiden win came in only his 4th start. The Brazilian enhanced his reputation in 1971 despite managing just 6 points. A year later, Lotus fielded an upgraded version of the Lotus 72, the John Player Special, and Fittipaldi swept to the championship with 5 victories. The last of those at Monza gave him the crown with 2 races to spare. Former champion Jackie Stewart won both of those races for Tyrrell to finish runner-up, and the following year their positions were reversed. Fittipaldi won 3 races but had to settle for runner-up to the Scot. Fittipaldi moved to McLaren for 1974, and Stewart's retirement meant that his chief rival of the past 2 seasons was off the scene. 3 wins took Fittipaldi into a final race showdown at Watkins Glen with Ferrari's Clay Regazzoni. The 2 were locked together in the points table, with Tyrrell's Jody Scheckter also in contention. 4th place gave Fittipaldi his 2nd championship, both of his rivals failing to score. After finishing runner-up again in 1975, this time to Niki Lauda, Fittipaldi joined his brother's Copazuca team. That's what I'm going to go for. There were a couple of podiums over the next 5 years, but the cars were off the pace compared with the top F1 teams. He came out of retirement to take the IndyCar title in 1989, winning the Indy 500 later that year and in 1993. Next up, we have a very interesting addition to this book. Timo Glock has apparently made this list of drivers, so yeah, fair play to him. Timo Glock was born on the 18th of March 1982 in Lindenfels in Germany. He started 73 races but didn't win a single one. Well, this was at the time of the 2011 season, and he scored 51 points in total. GP2 champ scores on debut. Over the years, the German F3 Championship has been a fertile breeding ground for future F1 drivers. Timo Glock competed in that series in 2002, following 4 successful years in karting. He took 3rd place and the Rookie of the Year award and confirmed his promise by finishing 5th in the European F3 Championship in 2003. Glock signed as test driver for Jordan for the new season and stepped into the hot seat at the Canadian Grand Prix, taking over from a struggling Giorgio Pantano. He joined an exclusive club by scoring on his debut, though his 7th place did come at the expense of Williams and Toyota, whose cars were disqualified for brake irregularities. That might have been a stroke of good fortune, but Glock still crossed the line ahead of his more experienced teammate Nick Heidfeld, and before the year was out he had taken Pantano's berth. Jordan was in a state of flux, about to be sold to the Midland Group, and 2005 saw Glock competing in the Champ Car Series. 2nd was his best finish, 8th overall, but again he took the top rookie honour. It was back to Europe and GP2 for the next 2 seasons. He took 4th place in 2006, the year in which Hamilton beat Piquet Jr. for top spot, and claimed the crown himself at the 2nd attempt, topping the podium on 5 occasions. He was also back on the F1 radar as a test driver for BMW Sauber, but Toyota stole a march on several interested parties by signing him to replace Ralf Schumacher, who was leaving Formula One. The highlight of 2008 came at the Hungaroring, where he qualified 5th and finished 2nd to Kovalainen's McLaren. His season's haul was 25 points, only 6 behind his vastly experienced teammate Jarno Trulli. He added 2 more podiums in 2009 and had 5 other point-scoring finishes before injury during qualifying at Suzuka brought his season to a premature end. Following Toyota's decision to pull out at the end of the year, Glock signed for new entrant Virgin Racing. He suffered a string of retirements in 2010, 14th at Suzuka, his best return of the year, and failed to better that in 2011. Mika Häkkinen. Mika Häkkinen was born on the 28th of September 1968 in Helsinki in Finland. He started 165 races, won 20 of them, and had a points total of 420, and he was world champion in 1998 and 1999. Double world champion. Mika Häkkinen took over from Keke Rosberg as Finland's F1 star. He won the British F3 title in 1990, graduating to F1 with Lotus the following season. Indeed, by the time he lifted the British F3 title in 1990, Häkkinen was being managed and mentored by the 1982 world champion. The following year he graduated to F1 with the Lotus team in decline. The Judd-engineered car was well off the pace, though he did bring it home 5th at Imola to register his first points. He scored in 6 races in 1992 to finish a highly creditable 8th in the championship. 4th place at Magny Court at the Eye, and it was clear that with a better car, Häkkinen had the ability to challenge the best. In 1993 he joined McLaren, though initially he had to kick his heels behind Senna and Michael Andretti. It was only after the latter was fired that Häkkinen got his chance. He outqualified Senna on his debut in Portugal, then in his second start at Suzuka, finished 3rd behind his teammate Ante Prost. After Ayrton Senna moved to Williams in 1994, Häkkinen took over as McLaren's number 1 driver. 1994 yielded 6 podiums, earning Häkkinen 4th place in the championship. He suffered life-threatening head injuries at the 1995 Australian Grand Prix, but recovered to finish 5th in the next 2 seasons. He got his long-awaited victory at Jerez, the final round of the 1997 championship, though he was helped by Villeneuve, who reined in his Williams, knowing that 3rd was enough for him to win the title. Having waited so long for a victory, they then came thick and fast. Häkkinen topped the podium 8 times in 1998 to claim the crown, then won 5 times in 1999 in defence of the title. In both years it went to the final race. He held off Ferrari's Michael Schumacher's challenge in 1998. Then when injury forced the German out of the running in 1999, Hakkinen had the edge on his Ferrari teammate Eddie Irvine. There were 4 wins in 2000, one of them after a dazzling 320 kilometre an hour. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Kilometres per hour, yeah. Battle with Schumacher at Spa, but this time he finished runner-up to the German. His swan song F1 season yielded 2 more victories in Britain and the US, a year in which he slipped to 5th in the title race. Lewis Hamilton. Now this is going to be a seriously outdated biography. Lewis Hamilton was born on the 7th of January 1985 in Stevenage in England. He started 90 Grand Prix at the time of this book coming out, and he'd had 17 victories by this point, 723 points in total, and he was a world champion in 2008, but since won it in 14, 15, 17 and 18, I believe. Record-breaking first season. After winning the British Cadet Championship in 1995, 10-year-old Lewis Hamilton went to the Autosport Awards ceremony, a star-struck youngster keen to fill his autograph book. Among the luminaries of the sport he approached that evening was Ron Dennis, who added "Call me in 9 years' time" next to his signature. He was responding to Lewis's bold statement of intent that he wanted to drive in F1 for McLaren, following in the footsteps of his hero Ayrton Senna. In fact, just 3 years went by before Dennis's team took the karting prodigy under its wing. It was a huge relief for the Hamilton family, who for years had scrimped and saved to fund Lewis's racing. The honours continued to come thick and fast. European champion and World Cup champion in Formula A in 2000, Formula Renault UK champion in 2003, winning 10 out of 15 races, and F3 Euro Series champion in 2005, with 15 wins and 13 poles. For 2006, it was on to GP2 with the ART team, where he took the title after battling with Nelson Piquet Jr. That autumn, McLaren confirmed his F1 seat for 2007, alongside double world champion Fernando Alonso. Elated but not overawed, Hamilton made a blistering start to his rookie year at the top table, with 9 straight podium finishes, including back-to-back wins in Canada and the USA. He headed the championship race from round 3 until the final twist at Interlagos, where Kimi Raikkonen's victory was enough to snatch the crown by a single point. Hamilton was philosophical about the defeat, which he took with great humility. At 22, he had become the youngest driver to lead the championship, breaking Bruce McLaren's record, and knew his talent and extraordinary focus would give him many more tilts at the title. Hamilton had to wait just 1 more year to put the disappointment of 2007 behind him. It was another championship that went to the wire, a last-gasp overtaking manoeuvre Interlagos securing him 5th place, enough to snatch the title from Ferrari's Felipe Massa by 1 point. At 23 years and 301 days, he became the youngest ever Formula One champion, taking the record from Fernando Alonso. McLaren struggled in 2009, and Lewis's reputation was tarnished following an unseemly incident at Melbourne, where he was disqualified for misleading the stewards. He recovered impressively to score 2 late-season wins. Hamilton added 3 more victories in 2010 and led mid-season, though during the run-in couldn't quite hang on to the coattails of Alonso's Ferrari and the Red Bulls. Another trio of wins followed in 2011, but a series of crashes and errors blighted a season in which he finished behind a teammate, Jenson Button, for the first time in his career. And then obviously we know what's happened since. It's been quite good for him, I have to say. Okay then, on to Mike Hawthorne. I think this will be the last one that we do for this part, I think, because this will come up to, I reckon, around about half an hour at least. I reckon that's a decent length, so I think this will be the last one for this part. So, Mike Hawthorne was born on the 10th of April 1929 in Mexborough in England and died on the 22nd of January 1959. He started 45 races and scored 3 victories, and a points total of 127.64, again another pretty strange points total. and he was world champion in 1958. Britain's first world champion. The blonde, flamboyant Mike Hawthorn cut a dashing figure on the racing scene in the 1950s. Although he invariably competed in a cap and bow tie, his dapper appearance belied his fierce competitiveness and the fact that he served a long apprenticeship before winning the world crown. By 1952, when he made his Grand Prix debut at Spa, Hawthorn was already seen as a rising star. He enhanced his reputation by finishing third at Silverstone on the way to taking joint fourth place in the championship. He drove for a team run by Father Leslie, but for 1953 he was snapped up by Ferrari. His first Grand Prix came at Reims that year, Hawthorn outbraking Fancho at the final corner in a breathtaking manoeuvre. He again finished fourth, having shown great consistency as well as courage and skill. The 1954 campaign was blighted by an accident at the non-championship Syracuse Grand Prix, but Hawthorn recovered to win the Spanish Grand Prix and finish third overall. He briefly joined Vanwall in 1955, a decision prompted by his father's death and a need to oversee the family business, before rejoining Ferrari. The championship races proved fruitless, but he did win at Le Mans in a Jaguar. Victory was tainted by an accident which resulted in 82 deaths, Hawthorn coming in for criticism for the manoeuvre that precipitated the tragic incident. After a forgettable 1956 season, Hawthorn returned to form, reunited once again with Ferrari. He finished fourth in 1957, but 1958 was the crowning glory. He won only once, the French Grand Prix, but scored consistently to pit Moss for the title by a single point. Hawthorn announced his retirement almost immediately. He was deeply affected by the death of teammate Peter Collins and was also suffering from a debilitating kidney condition. He was killed in a road accident near Guildford on the 22nd of January 1959, just 3 months after becoming Britain's first world champion. So there we go, that is everything for part 2. I hope that you enjoyed it like you did with the last one. Let me know what you think of the soft speaking as opposed to the whispering. It's definitely something that I want to do a lot more of, so I hope you guys enjoyed that aspect. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this part. We're going to carry on with the drivers in part 3. There's quite a lot of drivers to get through, so it might take us a few parts. We got the drivers, and then we've got season by season, and then we've got some of the teams, and then we've got like the standings from all of the seasons. So it's going to be quite a lot to get through. There might end up being quite a lot of parts to this, unless I make them longer. If you have like an opinion on like the length of video that you want to see for this kind of series, let me know. But I think half an hour, something like that, is fairly reasonable, so I'm tempted to sort of keep it that length from now on. But yeah, just let me know any thoughts that you guys have on this series, and like I say, I hope you're enjoying it. But that is going to be everything for today's video, so thank you very much for watching. As always, please leave a like on there if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. Comment below any thoughts and suggestions you may have. If you'd like to check me out on social media and check out my other channels, links to those will be in the description below. But thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next one.